Hey everyone. While I want this channel to be more focused on film discussion, I want to take time to look at another interest of mine, that being professional wrestling. Before I wanted to be a filmmaker, I wanted to be a pro wrestler, but as I got older, I found that film was more for me than anything else. But I still have a deep love and passion for the pro wrestling world. The theatrics, the stunt work, the storytelling, the catchphrases, I love all of it. What would pro wrestling be without, well, it's gimmicks. A gimmick can make or break a wrestler. Sometimes a phenomenal wrestler can be hindered by an awful gimmick, or sometimes a pretty mediocre wrestler can be made a star with a great gimmick. And with Halloween right around the corner, I figured why not take a deep dive into the more horrific side of wrestling gimmicks. And I'm not talking about Bastion Booger either. No, I'm talking about the kind of gimmicks that look like they're ripped right out of a horror movie. To start us off appropriately, let's take a quick look at Japanese promotions that use actual horror villains from movies. I guess US copyright laws don't necessarily have an effect over in Japan, so Japanese audiences are treated to such dream matches as Leatherface vs. Freddy Krueger. I want to take a quick look at one of the most memorable things WCW has ever made during the 90s. That's right, the Yeti. Now I know what you're thinking, that's no abominable snowman, that's just some poor sap who is dressed up like a mummy. And you're right. Yeah, the Yeti's only real claim to fame is dry-humping Hollywood Hulk Hogan in the middle of the ring during an episode of Monday Nitro. And then we never saw him again. Now, if you want something horror-themed that is actually kind of cool from WCW back in the 90s, there is always the Crow, I mean, Sting. Alright, look, I know the Crow movies aren't really horror, but they got the right kind of creepy atmosphere. And Sting is one of the coolest wrestlers of all time. And WCW perfectly recreated the titular character from the Brandon Lee film, but leave it to the big dub to bring in some awesome horror-themed wrestlers, like the Boogeyman. This guy would smash clocks against his face, eat piles of worms, and creepily tell him nursery rhymes before every horror movie trailer did in the 2010s. The Boogeyman was really dumb. And no offense to Martin Wright, he was a pretty terrible wrestler too. Thankfully, Boogeyman's matches were short, and his career was much shorter. And then you got the Brood, which is just a cult of vampires led by Gangrel. Gangrel was so into his gimmick, he actually filed his teeth so they would look like vampire fangs. It was unneeded, but it gave the group more character than it actually had. Of course, the Brood is best known for introducing the world to the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian, and Gangrel kind of fell off the map just like the Boogeyman. Now let's move towards more of the good stuff WWE has to offer, like the Demon King himself, Finn Balor. Now normal Finn Balor is just some Irish guy who can do some cool stuff in the ring, but when the Demon King comes out, boy, you're in for a sight to see. The face paint alone looks awesome, but Finn adds so much character to him. The way he crawls out of the smoke, the way he performs in the ring, it all adds to him being much more powerful and a much more memorable character. Now, we can't talk about NXT alum without talking about Husky Harris. Yeah, you remember Husky Harris, right? You probably know him better as Bray Wyatt. Wyatt character started off as some southern cult leader who was similar to Robert De Niro's character from Cape Fear. Wyatt was hypnotic as the Eater of Worlds, and his stooges looked like they just walked out of the set from You're Next. His entrance especially was awesome, with fans lighting their phone flashlights like they were fireflies in the summer night. But of course, he's moved on from that gimmick. And now, we get Mr. Rogers Bray Wyatt.
Yowie wowie! You found me!
I do prefer this gimmick over the Eater of Worlds one. I do like both of them equally, but this one's a little more memorable and unique. But of course, this evil Mr. Rogers has a dual personality. One that's Bray Wyatt, and the other is The Fiend. The Fiend is legit freaky. His entrance is even more memorable than original Bray Wyatt's. The Fiend carrying a lantern that's the decapitated head of his former self, and that mask is both creepy and badass. It should be said that the Fiend mask was created by horror special effects legend Tom Savini. You know, Dawn of the Dead Tom Savini. But what if the Fiend isn't extreme enough for you? Well, you can always thank Mrs. Foley's baby boy. That's right, Mick Foley. You probably know him best as Cactus Jack or Dude Love. But since we're talking about horror, let's focus on the best incarnation of Mick Foley, Mankind. That Hannibal Lecter-like mask, the way he would just absolutely demolish his opponents while putting his own body on the line, nothing was as disturbing as Mankind's promos in the mid-90s. And that Hell in a Cell match at King of the Ring 1998, that's the stuff of legend. Am I forgetting anything? Oh yeah, Kane and Undertaker, the Miser Brothers of Destruction. Probably the coolest gimmicks in wrestling. Kane is basically Jason Voorhees as a professional wrestler. Just an absolute beast in the ring with an awesome mask to boot. And The Undertaker. What else is there to say? Most non-wrestling fans already know who the guy is, or at the very least have heard of him. The dude is an undead wizard who's also a biker on the side. He's a big dude who's also as athletic as a gymnast. He's won some of the greatest matches of all time, and some of the worst. The Dead Man is the GOAT. No ifs and or buts. I've seen both of these guys perform live. Kane at a SmackDown taping and Undertaker at WrestleMania itself. With Kane, you feel the heat from his entrance. Your jaw drops just looking at the size of this man. And with Undertaker, a legit chill rolls through the crowd. There's no other way to describe it. It's both creepy and badass in ways I can't even describe. Of course, both men are retired now. Undertaker finally broke kayfabe and is doing his own thing, and Kane is the current mayor of Knoxville County, Tennessee. You really can't make stuff like that up. But if there was ever a horror-based gimmick in wrestling that was both badass and terrifying, it would have to be Kane and Undertaker's. These guys have solidified themselves as absolute legends in the industry's history.
Go yourself. It's pretty good.
Look, this is just me geeking out on the more horror side of the wrestling industry for a bit. If you're a big horror movie fan who's interested in checking out wrestling, I highly recommend looking into these guys. Not only do they have fun, horror-inspired gimmicks, but they have some of the best matches in the industry. I hope they live up to the hype that I'm giving them. And with that, I'm Tim McGordy, and I'll catch you later. Oh, and yeah, I did leave out Abyss. I didn't watch a lot of TNA growing up, but come on, can you really blame me?